Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a research story that's going to totally shift how you look at the natural world. When we hear the word virus, our minds almost automatically jump to pathogens, illness, global health crises, right? But we're going to flip that script. We're looking at a completely different side of the viral kingdom. We're exploring how these microscopic entities are actually some of the most powerful, unseen engineers operating on our planet today, actively shaping the very chemistry of the Earth. Think about the carbon cycle for a second. You probably picture massive rainforests absorbing CO2, herds of grazing animals, or maybe the vast oceans. But what if the key to the Earth's carbon cycle isn't just a plant or an animal? What if a massive portion of how carbon is captured, recycled, and stored is actually driven by a virus? It's an incredible contrast between the visible world we interact with every day and an invisible workforce of microscopic engineers that fundamentally regulate our climate.
Beyond microbes, viruses quietly shape carbon cycling. That right there is the core thesis of this explainer. For the longest time, we've known that bacteria and fungi drive the microbial loop, breaking down organic matter. But as recent research across global data sets is showing us, viruses are kind of the ultimate puppet masters here. They are constantly at work pulling the strings of their microbial hosts, and in doing so, they exert massive control over how carbon moves through our ecosystems.
And consider the sheer scale of their habitat. These unseen ecosystem players are literally everywhere. We're talking paddy soils and intermittent wetlands, global river ecosystems, and deep ocean marine plankton blooms. Across all three of these entirely distinct environments, moving from terrestrial mud right down to the deep blue sea, viruses are the universal drivers of biogeochemical cycling.
Section 1. Highlighting past findings. The mechanics of carbon control.
So, how exactly does an entity without its own independent metabolism manage to regulate global CO2 reduction? Well, it all comes down to the mechanics of their life cycles, specifically how they interact with, manipulate, and eventually destroy their bacterial hosts. Let's translate the microscopic to the macroscopic for a second. 150 gigatons. That is the staggering amount of carbon catalytically converted every single year in marine systems just through viral host lysis. To put that into perspective, viruses infect and terminate 20 to 40% of all marine bacterial biomass every single day. When they burst these cells open, they transform solid particulate organic matter into dissolved organic matter, redirecting a mind-boggling 150 gigatons of carbon annually.
Now, marine viruses use two primary pathways to control all of this carbon. First up is the viral shunt. This is when viral lysis releases dissolved organic carbon right back into the microbial loop, which fuels surface-level bacteria and keeps that carbon actively recycling. But on the flip side, we have the viral shuttle. Here, the destruction of cells creates these sticky, carbon-rich aggregates. These heavy particles clump together into marine snow and sink, effectively exporting and trapping that carbon deep at the ocean floor. So viruses aren't just feeding the food web, they're actively sequestering carbon.
And hey, this is absolutely not just an ocean phenomenon. Let's look at freshwater systems. An astonishing 33.6% of respiratory carbon released by global river ecosystems actually passes through what scientists call a phase loop. That means roughly a third of the carbon dynamics in the world's flowing rivers are directly governed by bacteriophages, dictating how nutrients are broken down and released downstream.
But what happens when the virus doesn't immediately kill its host? Let's pivot over to terrestrial biomes, specifically soil. Here, we see this bottom-up regulation via a lysogenic life cycle. This is where viruses actually integrate their DNA right into the host bacterium's genome, and they bring tools with them, known as auxiliary metabolic genes, or AMGs. These are host-derived genes carried by viruses that literally reprogram the host's metabolism during infection. Essentially, the virus hacks the bacteria's software to completely change how it processes carbon.
Which brings us to an absolutely incredible finding in agricultural environments. In flooded paddy soils, nearly a quarter of these auxiliary viral genes, 23.7% to be exact, are specifically dedicated to carbon utilization. Viruses are out there equipping their hosts with genes that help fix CO2 and convert bioavailable carbohydrates into more stable, sequestered forms. They are actively upgrading their hosts to trap carbon right there in the mud.
The really crucial point here is how this system reacts to our changing world. Research shows that environmental stress fundamentally alters viral behavior. For example, in soils contaminated with heavy metal pollution, we actually see an increase in the expression of these viral carbon-fixing genes. The stress basically pushes the system toward lysogeny.
The viruses hunker down inside the host, share their metabolic genes, and accelerate carbon turnover just to ensure their mutual survival in a highly toxic environment.
Let's zoom out even further, to the absolute extremes of our planet, the deep-sea biosphere. We aren't just talking about a few stragglers down there. Scientists analyzing sediments have uncovered a massive hidden viral world, identifying over 324,000 DNA viruses and 61,000 RNA viruses. And amazingly, these populations show persistence spanning anywhere from 1900 up to 24,000 years. They aren't just sitting dormant either. These DNA and RNA viruses have been actively co-participating in host carbon metabolism over vast geological timescales.
Section 2. Connecting to ongoing research. Updating global climate models. With all this incredible data on the viral shunt, the viral shuttle, and metabolic reprogramming, the scientific community is racing to integrate this hidden world into our actual climate forecasts. Because honestly, if we don't account for the viruses, our math on the global carbon cycle is fundamentally flawed. Researchers use a very specific three-step procedure to bridge the microscopic with the macroscopic. Step 1 relies on lab metatranscriptomics and viral tracking to see exactly which genes are expressing in the environment. Step 2 uses that data to generate carbon flux predictions based purely on viral lysis rates. And finally, Step 3 integrates those precise viral mortality parameters into massive predictive ocean ecosystem models, like the Darwin model.
This represents a massive paradigm shift in biogeochemistry. Viruses are now an essential part of climate models. We literally can no longer accurately model the Earth's climate without explicitly accounting for viral lysis and metabolic reprogramming. When ecosystem models omit viral interactions, they miscalculate both the recycling of nutrients in surface waters and the amount of carbon exported to the deep ocean. It's a non-negotiable part of predicting our climate future.
Section 3. Future Focus. Open Scientific Challenges.
As we look to the horizon, we have to ask, what are the big remaining mysteries in viral ecology? First off, can viruses be actively harnessed for carbon sequestration? We know the viral shuttle helps trap carbon at the bottom of the ocean. Well, emerging research is now working to identify high-priority marine viruses that possess these specific metabolic pathways. The big question is whether we can intentionally use these viruses to manipulate ocean microbiomes, artificially increasing their conversion of CO2 into solid, sinkable carbon forms. It's an incredible frontier in geoengineering.
Second, how will our changing climate alter these very viral roles? Studies are already showing that anthropogenic stressors, like ocean acidification, deeply impact viral dynamics. We have to understand if our changing atmosphere is going to short-circuit or maybe even hyperdrive these crucial viral carbon pathways.
And this brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought to leave you with. Could viral ecology ultimately inform global carbon credits? Think about it. If viruses in a heavily managed agricultural paddy soil are responsible for a massive percentage of that soil's carbon storage, shouldn't our environmental economics account for them? The future of how we value, protect, and monetize the environment might just hinge on unseen, microscopic viruses quietly pulling the strings of the Earth's carbon cycle. Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning what you can't see.